Do you think the extinction of the dinosaurs was the most brutal wipeout in Earth's history? Wrong. The death of the dinosaurs was a major reset, but compared to what happened before, it was not Earth's darkest moment. The real disaster that almost forced the planet to start over happened more than 250 million years ago. That time, it was not just one species disappearing, it was not just one continent collapsing, it was the entire planet moving toward a death screen. The oceans were suffocating, the land was burning, the sky looked poisoned. Life did not die in one clean wave. It collapsed layer by layer, like a server crashing from the inside. This disaster was the Permian Mass Extinction. If the Cambrian was when Earth first randomly generated monsters, if the Carboniferous was when Earth turned insects into boss-level creatures, and if Deadliest was Earth's first bone-crushing machine, then the Permian Extinction was the first time Earth seriously considered formatting the entire life system. When most people think of prehistoric disaster, they imagine an asteroid hitting Earth, a fireball falls from the sky, the dinosaurs vanish, the age ends. It sounds brutal, but the Permian Extinction was different. It was not one rock falling from space and giving life a quick death. It was slower, much slower. It was more like Earth was being tortured from the inside. The planet did not explode, it started rotting from within. At that time, most of the world's land had joined into one giant supercontinent. Imagine almost all land on Earth squeezed together into one massive block. Deep inside that landmass were endless dry interiors. Coastlines became fewer, wet regions became fewer, many places became hotter, drier, and more like an iron pan, slowly heating over fire. But the real nightmare was not on the surface, it was underground. In what is now Siberia, massive volcanic eruptions began, and this was not one volcano erupting for a few days. It was the ground itself breaking open. Lava poured out, layer after layer. Volcanic ash rushed into the sky. Toxic gases entered the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide kept rising. Earth's temperature started climbing. At first, life may have thought this was just another climate fluctuation, a little hotter, a little drier. Maybe it could be endured, maybe it would pass. But Earth did not stop. It kept heating up. The air became heavy, the oceans began to warm. The ecosystems that once seemed stable started to crack. On land, plants were among the first to suffer. Forests declined, soil became exposed, rivers carried huge amounts of mud into the sea. Some animals could no longer find food. Some migrated farther and farther away. Others simply collapsed. In the drought, you think that was bad? No, the real massacre happened in the ocean. Because the ocean may look enormous, but it is not endlessly safe. When temperatures rise, oxygen in seawater drops. For marine life, this was like turning the entire ocean into a hot, oxygen-starved pot. Imagine you are a fish. You try to swim away, but wherever you go, the water is warm. You try to hide deeper, but the deep water is darker, heavier, and even lower in oxygen. You think you are escaping, but in reality, you are just moving to another corner of the same boiling trap. And then it got worse. When the ocean became too low in oxygen, many normal forms of life could no longer survive. But some anaerobic microbes began to thrive. They did not need oxygen. They liked this rotting world. So the ocean began to stink. The seafloor turned black. Toxic substances may have kept leaking through the water. This was no longer the blue ocean we know. It was more like a rotting wound, cut across an entire planet. If a modern human were suddenly thrown into the late Permian world, do not imagine a beautiful prehistoric landscape. You would look up and see a grey, poisoned sky. The sun would look as if it were shining through dirty glass. The air might be full of volcanic ash and sharp, choking smells. Under your feet, the ground would be cracked dry. In the distance, forests would be dying in patches. Rivers would run thick with mud. Animal bodies would lie along the shore. No birdsong, no insect noise, no sense of a living ancient world. Only one feeling. Earth had a fever, and the fever was severe. You walk toward the coast, thinking maybe the ocean is still alive. But what you see is a dark, murky, lifeless surface. Waves push dead fish onto the shore. Broken shells mix with mud and sand. The creatures that once crawled, swam, hunted, and fed across the seafloor now disappear in waves, as if the ocean itself is being emptied. And the most terrifying part? This extinction did not only kill the weak, it killed the strong too. You had armor? Useless. You had sharp teeth? Useless. You could swim fast? Useless. You hid in deep water? Still useless. Because this time, the enemy was not a predator. It was not Deadliest. It was not a dinosaur. It was not a giant insect. The enemy was the environment itself. It was the air you breathed, the ground beneath your feet, the water you depended on. When the entire planet becomes your enemy, every weapon evolution gave you suddenly looks ridiculous. That is what made the Permian extinction so terrifying. It was not a war, it was a system collapse. Once the food chain broke, everything connected to it began to fall. Plants died, the animals that ate plants starved. When the herbivores collapsed, the predators lost their food. In the ocean, low oxygen killed bottom-dwelling life. Once the bottom layer fell apart, the fish, the predators, and the entire marine ecosystem began to collapse in a chain reaction. It was like a building where the roof was not the first first part to fall. The foundation shattered first, then every floor above it came crashing down. The once busy seafloor became quieter and quieter. The once complex land ecosystems became emptier and emptier. Earth had spent hundreds of millions of years building up its inventory of life, and in this disaster, that inventory was almost cleared to the bottom. You think rulers are strong? In the Permian Extinction, rulers only died later. You think large animals had the advantage? In this kind of world, the bigger your body, the more energy you needed, the more food you required, the harder it became to survive. The creatures with the best chance were not always the strongest. They were often the ones that could endure, hide, and survive almost anywhere. That is the irony of Earth. It does not reward arrogance. It rewards survival, even if you are small, even if you hide in a corner, even if you were never important. In the old world, if you survive a disaster that others cannot survive, the next world may be yours to enter. And after the Permian extinction, Earth really did feel as if a huge part of life had been cleared away. Many former main characters vanished. Many ecological roles were left empty. Then, slowly, new life began to fill the gaps. Among those survivors and descendants were groups that would change Earth's history. Their future lineages would include dinosaurs. They would also include early mammal ancestors. In other words, without this extinction, the dinosaur age may never have arrived the way it did, and the story of humans may never have had a chance to be written. That is what makes ancient Earth so frightening. It does not always move forward in a smooth line of progress. Sometimes, it destroys an entire world first, and then begins again from the ruins. The Cambrian opened the monster loot box. The Carboniferous turned bugs into bosses. The Devonian created the bone-crushing machine. But the Permian taught every living thing one brutal lesson: do not think that just because you adapted to the world will always stay adapted to you. Earth has no obligation to maintain your comfort zone. Change the temperature a little, change the oxygen a little, change the ocean a little, and the entire system of life can be reshuffled. So when we say today that a species is the ruler of Earth, or that a civilization is the peak of life, it sounds almost funny, because Earth has seen too many rulers. Some flew through the sky, some swam through the ocean, some wore armor, some had sharp teeth. They all once believed their age would continue, but Earth only needs one version update to turn them all into fossils. The Permian Mass Extinction is not just a distant disaster story. It is more like a warning note left by the planet for everything that comes after. And on that note, there is only one sentence: do not mistake stability for eternity, because the planet beneath your feet has never been a gentle mother. It is more like a cold archive keeper. It records who came, who flourished, who ruled, who became arrogant, and then, at some quiet turning point in time, it simply turns the page, and after that page is turned, many forms of life never come back.